Live? All right, guys, let's try this again. I am doing a project for St. Michael's in Kansas City. Basically, Mark Valentine reached out to me about doing a calendar for St. Michael's. St. Michael's is a wonderful place where homeless veterans have a place to go in and live. And they live in this community. There's a lot of recovery and healthy food and healthy games. And basically, when he called me to do this project, I felt like it was a very big calling for me. I had been, a few times I've worked with some veterans. And so basically, I interviewed Art. Art Fillmore runs the place, is the founder. And he's going to tell this story, a little bit of how this all came about. And as he does that, I'm going to put it into art. This art's going to go into thousands and thousands of calendars that they're going to sell around the city, Kansas City. And so enough of me. Let's listen to this interview. And basically, I'm going to wrap it up after this 10-minute interview. And I'm going to take some questions, and then you'll be able to see this art live. We've done a lot of work on this, so bear with the technical difficulties. I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but this is what we rigged up. So thanks for your time if you're still listening.
There was a special showing in Kansas City with Ken Burns, a preview of what he was doing. And there was a project at the time called Project 22, which related to something you and I have discussed. Project 22 was a project devoted to photographs depicting individuals who had been affected by PTSD. And it was, the name came from the fact that there were 22 active duty veterans committing suicide every day. And so I was chosen as one of the subjects of that because of both my dad's experience as a suicide, which I think came from PTSD, and then my own PTSD returning from Viet Nam. And so
did that help did that help you heal by being a part of that project?
No, I pretty much had gotten past it. I
Okay.
got back to Viet Nam in 1995 and 96, 6 times as the volunteer chair for a group called Heart to Heart, which took a medical mission back there. And it was amazing the way I got involved with it. I had a friend in Kansas City who had been telling me for almost a year, there's a guy named Dr. Gary Morse, and he takes medical missions to places in the newly independent states of the former Soviet Union, places like that, and he wants to go to Vietnam. And I was chairman of the Kansas City Vietnam Veterans Memorial, and he said he's looking for a fairly high-profile Vietnam veteran who has credibility with other Vietnam veterans, and I'd like to meet with you and see if you would be interested in being part of that project. And I said, well, yeah, Vietnam is not really someplace I want to revisit. I still have very bad feelings about it. And at the same time, I had a law partner who was doing international adoptions, and he was in Hanoi doing adoptions, and he was Catholic, and he went to the only Catholic church in Hanoi, and he was kneeling, or he was waiting outside of a locked gate for the Catholic church to have its mass on a Sunday morning, and there was a woman kneeling in front of him. He finally looked down and he said, "Aren't you Mother Teresa?" And it was. And he said, and they talked, and she said, "Where are you from?" And he said, "Well, I'm from a place you've probably never heard of. It's called Kansas in the United States." And she said, "Oh, do you know Dr. Gary Morse in Heart to Heart?" And he goes, "No, but I actually have a law partner who has been talking about meeting with him." And she said, "What's his name?" And he said, "Art Fillmore." She said, "You tell Mr. Fillmore he needs to meet with Dr. Morse." So I thought, well, Howie Flasher tells me that's one thing, but Mother Teresa says I should meet with Gary Morse. It kind of has a bit more impact. So I met with Gary, and
that's incredible.
Yeah, and because of that, he convinced me that I should go back, and going back is really where the cathartic thing that helped me through my PTSD, because I had stopped talking about Vietnam. The day I got back, the weekend I got back from Vietnam, I was less than 72 hours out of combat, and my wife and I went to Columbia, Missouri for a football game, and I was with the Bible fraternity brothers. I was completely uncomfortable. I was on complete nerves, were on edge, because I didn't want people behind me. I didn't want noise. I didn't want people I didn't know. I wanted my M16. I wanted my Colt 45. I wanted to know everything about everything going on around me. I didn't want surprises. I didn't want quick motion. And of course, the worst place to be if you feel like that is in the middle of a football game, particularly with Missouri playing Kansas, which they were that day. And
wow. What year is that? Do you remember?
That was November 1970. I was in Vietnam in 69, 70. And they fired off a cannon when Missouri scored. I jumped down on my bleachers, sought cover, and my fraternity brothers looked at me and they said, "Well, man, you changed." And I said, "Well, if you've been through what I've been doing for the last 12 months, if you don't change, there's something wrong with you." And so that night I went to a party, and everybody was doing what they did in 1970, which was getting high and being profoundly philosophical. And a guy who had been my fraternity brother and my best friend said, "So, Art, did you kill any women and children when you were over there?" And I said, "Well, Jim, there were women and children who were killed in firefights in which I was involved, for certain, but I wasn't there trying to kill women and children." He said, "Well, I wouldn't have done that." And I said, "You don't know what you would have done." I said, "Until it happens to you, you don't know how you're going to react to it." I said, "I can tell you it wasn't a cerebral choice. It wasn't even, certainly wasn't a moral choice. When somebody is shooting at you, you either take them out or you go home in a body bag." And I chose not to go home in a body bag, and some bad things happened as a consequence. I used a lot of napalm. I called in napalm. My job over there was I was a forward observer for an infantry company, 5th Special Forces Group, and Navy River Marines, which were the Brown River Navy. And so I was in firefights constantly, calling it napalm. A lot of ugly things came out of napalm. Let's see, bodies that had been burned by napalm. And so it was a traumatic experience. And when he said, "Well, I think you're a bad person for having made those choices and killed women and children, and I think less of you for it." And I said, "Well, you weren't there. You don't have the right to judge me. You have no idea what I went through." And so, to be candid, why don't you just shut the fuck up? And I went over and gave a shove and left the party. And that's the last time I talked to Vietnam about anybody for 15 years. I just said, that's the kind of reaction I'm going to get. I'm keeping this to myself. And it was that, the not talking about it for 15 years that caused the PTSD, because I couldn't share my experience. And it wasn't until I began getting involved with the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in 1985 that I began to share my experiences with veterans, because only veterans understood what I'd been through. And that began the evolution of my coming out of my PTSD shell. And then when I was in Vietnam, for Heart to Heart, the first time I went back there, I was given by Heart to Heart a bag of medicines. I had no idea what they were. I was traveling with a Heart to Heart staffer and got taken to a village called Bukaty, which was the home base of my 25th Division. And they said, "Let's go out to this clinic and maybe you can meet some of the doctors." And so I was out there. This is the place where I'd been fighting for a year, so it was not a comfortable place for me to be. Anyway, but I was traveling with these doctors, and they took me in a room where there was a small boy. In Vietnam, 1 year of medical school has to include learning English. So they spoke enough English to converse with me. And they took me into a room with a little boy with a distended stomach. And I said, "What's wrong with him?" And he said, "Well, he's got a disease, a virus, whatever, and he's gonna die. All we have is these French herbal medicines left from the 50s when the French were here." That's why I got this bag of things that Heart to Heart gave me, and they looked in there. There was the antibiotic that they needed, and they looked at the boy, and they looked at his father, and they said, "You're gonna live." And there wasn't a dry eye in the room, and I had gone from killing to healing in that one moment. I thought, okay. And so I spent the rest of the trip feeling more like I was dealing with people who could use my help and healing instead of worrying about who I had to kill next. And it was a very cathartic experience.
Okay. Now I'm just going to wrap it up. If there's any questions, I know Mark had a few, but basically what we're going to do is just take this image, put it into a calendar. There's more technical difficulties. Okay, well that will lighten it up a little bit, like it must have needed. But this is, I'm not really used to painting without music, so I probably should have just left that on. But I am going to talk about why this is important to me because of some of the trauma I dealt with, how I related to it, and how things can turn around. And in my recovery, I just kind of had a new pair of glasses, so to speak, and I'm able to look at things a little different. And when I relating to art is like when you zoom out, 12 years ago I was pretty broken in a sense and was not able to function. My life was unmanageable, and obviously I didn't suffer in the war, but I can relate to somebody who struggles with suicidal thoughts, and did experience a friend close to me that struggled with, who committed suicide. So I kind of related to that, which makes me want to stop thinking about it and do something about it. So I feel like I was able to, use this platform to paint and, share his story for a good cause. It's kind of felt like it's been my direction lately, and dealing with stress and trauma as I've been kind of in my head on this COVID. So obviously this is the first one, and we're just doing the best we can. Are there any questions out there? No. Do you have a question, Jamala? Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right. So basically, in recovery, what helps and what he shared, what I got out of it was him sharing with others helped the healing process. So, as we were talking, there was an actual, healing situation going on, and that helps me as well. So these guys were, some of these guys he was talking about were homeless, and then 10 years later, even 6 months later, completely, new men. And the interview is an hour. For me, it was an hour. And they were just talking about dignity and how you can get your life back. One of these guys was homeless 6 months later, had a full-time job, was a very productive person in society. And, I think Mark's going to put something in the link, but about how you can help. And this image itself will probably be on thousands of calendars, and as we go in, I'm going to work with women vets, young, old, however they come my way, I'm going to interview them and share their story and try to help help people with my small talent and just be a small piece of the puzzle. That's it. I could
John, we have a question.
really use a question.
Yeah, so Jesse, who's a collector of yours, he wants to know where we're doing this right now.
So where am I doing it right now? I am in New Orleans. Obviously, I'm from Kansas City. I'm doing it at my studio, live via Facebook, and that was a interview on Zoom, obviously. And yeah, this is gonna be posted at least once a month because we are going to finish this by obviously the holidays, by the time the holidays come, and so it'll be for sale. I don't know when it'll be for sale. We're just putting the pieces together. So yeah, that, I hope that answers the question. And then I'll post the final picture on my page. But if there are not any questions, I'll be wrapping it up pretty quick. I can paint, but I don't know if I can just make up shit as I'm going. That may just be a little hard.
John, I have a question. Do you have any veterans in your life?
I do. That's a good question because in the interview I mentioned that. But basically 3 uncles were Vietnam vets, and one of my uncles, none of them died. But one of my uncles during the Vietnam War went to the Peace Corps in Thailand, which was very connected at that time, and very similar situation. Obviously, he was trying to do something different as a Peace Corps member, but I also have veterans that I connect with. I did a project with Bert Kuntz and his interesting, incredible community that he built on social media, and visited him up in Wyoming, and I definitely have worked with some vets in recovery, and yeah, I have a lot others in my life too.
Let's see. Andy wants to know what is the surface that you're painting on? Is that just a canvas?
This is a prepped painted canvas, and when I say prepped, I just put a base coat on there the same way you would prime something. I just primed it with a different color. Uh-oh, shortage of questions.
Shortage of questions. But
We're gonna wrap it up, tighten it up, and then you guys will say, I seen it here first. Saw it here first. It's a really interesting project though, guys and girls, and I look forward to announcing it more and working with we've got some really, really beautiful people that are lined up that have incredible stories, and I just am honored to be a part of this puzzle that can be a conduit to bringing out someone's story. I also had a friend that really helped me launch this and give me the courage to do it, Chris O'Shea, who's a local New Orleans, and he has a lot of insight that helped me have the courage to kind of do this, because it is obviously a sensitive topic, and you know, I'm not an art therapist. I am just doing this because my intuition says it's a good idea and helpful, and that's it. I've said and so much. I'm probably gonna finish this up after I dial in and look at it from afar And there it is. And I'm checking out now. Bye, guys. Thank you so much. I'll post this final thing after I'm finished in a matter of 24 hours. Adios. Thank you. And then finish and keep.